Now let's move on to soft tissue dysfunction, which is really the most important aspect of understanding about myofunctional orthodontics. Here we see Renee here with a quite severe reverse swallow, and we see the effects of that on the occlusion. She has an open bite, a tongue thrust swallow, very narrow maxilla, a lot of lower crowding and lost C-space. And when the trainer goes in, the T for K, you can see this activity stops. That's the principle behind myofunctional orthodontics. So correction of soft tissue dysfunction. Let's look a little bit more into what soft tissue dysfunction is all about. Principles here are very basic. If the tongue's in the maxilla, you get a good arch form. If it's not in the maxilla, you get crowding, narrow arches and crowding. So our emphasis is primarily to get the tongue sitting in the maxilla and the mouth closed. The reciprocal action of the tongue in swallowing and the orbicularis oris muscles also creates this reverse swallowing pattern, and there's where your crowding comes from. So we need to understand, we've got to think about the lips and tongue when we're looking at malocclusion. So correction of these bad habits, conversely, allows us to align the teeth much more easily without very high mechanical forces. Even a Class 2 Division 2, you can see that the lips have a big influence on the upper anterior teeth, and you'll see this every time with a Class 2 Division 2, that overactive mentalis driving the upper anterior teeth back and a lowered anterior tongue position. These are new 3Ds that we've created just to show you the growth journey. This is from really the principles of Enloe. As children's growth goes downwards and forwards, that's how they grow, and you can see that there's more room for the anterior and the posterior teeth as they're coming in. The problem when you have the growth journey interrupted is that the growth and development goes more vertical than horizontal, and there's less room for the teeth. And you'll see this in the classic version of a mouth breather. If they were growing correctly, it would look like this. And when the mouth is open all the time, the growth is vertical, and you can see there's less room for the anterior and the posterior teeth. So the growth should be something like this, and it ends up very much protruded, which gives us less room for the teeth and a compromised facial development. Reverse swallow, the same sort of thing. The dysfunction is in the reverse direction of natural growth, and that means that children have compromised facial development. Take these bad influences away, naturally the children grow correctly. And that's what we see in the practice all the time. Improved facial development, improved space for the teeth, and improved dental alignment by correcting myofunctional habits. And the principle is really getting the tongue up in the maxilla, as I said. We also, in addition to our trainer system, we get more arch form by getting the tongue up into the correct position, but we also emphasize to the children that they consciously must hold the tongue up in the maxilla all the time, because that's the natural position. When we start to look at arch form, now start thinking what dysfunction of the muscles and the tongue cause these arches to be this shape. Those teeth are in that position because there's poor tongue function, poor lip function. We must look for the causes, not of the poor tooth alignment, but the myofunctional causes, and correct that first. And this is also associated with TMJ dysfunction. You see here the reverse swallow, the very tight mentalis activity is driving the mandible back. That not only restricts growth, that also tends to compress the temporomandibular joint. So we want to emphasize that we don't want to stick with Angle's classification of Class 2, Class 3. We don't want to emphasize that we're looking at crowding. We want to say what's causing this to happen, and it should be all about the tongue, the lips, and the breathing.